Hey, what's up, fuckers? It's Vanta. Um, kind of feeling a little tired today, but that's okay. You know, it is summer finally, and probably by the end of next month, a lot of these Halloween events are going to start announcing what they're going to have for the fall season. Um, for sure, Knots. You know, they have like their annual preview of what's going to happen. What's going to happen during, or what's going to happen at fall during, I think July they have their preview. But yeah, I don't know. Someone tried calling me. I don't know who it was. But yeah, during July, Not Scary Farm typically has their preview. They show you what new mazes they have. And usually they have one or two new mazes because, you know, they sent out the retired mazes to other parks because it is a part of the Cedar Fair chain now. So that's like Cedar Point, Great America. There's a few in Florida and Georgia. King's Dominion, I believe, is the one in Florida. No, sorry, in Georgia. But yeah, so whatever mazes get retired here, they send them out to those parks. But ultimately, I believe most of the parks, most of the Halloween mazes in the Cedar Fair chain start in Not Scary Farm because that's where it started. That's where the Halloween industry started. You know, of course, Halloween has been around for much longer, since the Celtic days and shit, and it's been in American culture for at least since the inception of America. But Halloween, like what you think of now when it comes to like the Halloween attractions, started in the 70s, almost kind of by accident, by Knots. Everyone still celebrated Halloween as they do now. Back then, with spider webs and witches and werewolves and all that shit. I believe maybe Hollywood would be more responsible for that kind of pop culture, the Halloween pop culture. But back then, Knott's wasn't much of a theme park, but rather just a collection of attractions. It wasn't, the Knott's as we know it now didn't come to realization until maybe the mid 80s. So, they would just decorate the park. In the Halloween style, they would use butcher's cloth, and cut it up to make it look like spider webs. And that's why if you go to Scary Farm, they have a very distinct look when it comes to their cobwebs, because it's that it came back from the 70s how they used to do that. But now we have the plastic spider web stuff that every place uses now. But yeah, they would just dress dress up the park nice and make it look all Halloweeny and stuff, put pumpkins everywhere. And eventually, they started incorporating what things called peek-ins, which is, they still exist in the park. And they, if you go to old-timey attractions, they still have them where you kind of, they have an old building that's all kind of, and you look inside the building and there's like an old historical set of like how life used to be back in the Wild West days. Like they have like the hot wing laundry. If you go to Knott's, they show you how most Chinese people, they weren't allowed to work in America, so they had to make their own businesses, and mostly they were in the cleaning industry. Like in the, they would offer hot showers or hot baths, and would do your laundry, dry cleaning. And they still have that kind of stuff, those attractions are still there in Knott's. But eventually, during the Halloween time, they got the bright idea, like, oh, let's put scary dudes in costumes in those little peek-ins, so when people look inside, they kind of get scared by the people in there. And but what happened was they couldn't find the key, or one of the managers couldn't find the key to open up one of those peek-ins to let in the actor. The scare actor. So what happened was, the manager told the scare actor, like, hey, just go scare people out in the streets, out in the ghost town streets, while we try to figure out how to make this key. And I did meet the guy who does fabricate the keys, who was responsible for getting the guy back in. When I worked at Knott's, old guy, pretty cool. He must have been really young when he was working there. So yeah, they told them to go scare people, do your thing. And then by the time they fabricated the key, they came back to the actor and they're like, "Well, you're doing a pretty good job scaring people out in the streets." So that same evening, they were like, "You know what? Just this, we'll unleash the actors, and put them out in the streets." And that's why if you go to Scary Farm or any kind of Halloween event, really, it's all just guys. They're out in the streets. They're not, stuck in the little peek-ins anymore. And that's where it started by accident, where people now come to Knott's to get scared on purpose, as opposed to like by accident as like a practical joke. But yeah, but eventually, that became so popular because of that particular aspect of the Halloween season that they started. I don't know how exactly they started getting into making mazes, but I know they had some old attraction called the Haunted Shack, and that's kind of where mazes were incepted, I believe. Get out of the way, please. But yeah, that's where it started in the 70s. That's where Scary Farm started, and now they're one of the biggest Halloween events in the world, and the oldest. The first. They started it. Disneyland never really got into it, to be honest. But then in the 90s, so 20 years afterwards, is when Universal decided, you know what, let's give it a try. They failed miserably here in Hollywood, and because at the time they already had the park in Orlando, but they failed miserably in the 90s, so they stopped doing that for at least 10 or 15 years here in Los Angeles at Universal. Well, the one in Hollywood was thriving because they don't have a Knott's over there. They, their first taste of the Halloween, event was through the Universal Studios Orlando Resort. So that got really popular over there, and it's just as big as Knott's Scary Farm, maybe a little bit bigger, but Knott's was the first one to do it, and they're the ones that are always or used to. They're known for pushing the envelope, for trying new things. Some examples would be like the oh my god, dude. Get out of the fucking way. It's kind of distracting having to babysit this fucking Harley in front of me. Right now, traffic's moving too slow for me to just whip it around him. Oh, look at that. Instantly, I'm more at a much better pace now. Fuck. But, yeah. Not the first, the first Halloween event in the world and the oldest. And they're known for pushing the envelope. So a lot of times what cool new crazy things that other Halloween events try, like in Six Flags or Universal, it's usually because they saw it first through Knott's Scary Farm. For example, like in my times of going there, they implemented the light gun apparatus thing where you're out there shooting zombies with the light gun in a maze. Like, who would have thought? Like everyone thought, like, oh man, I wish I can go be out there in the zombie apocalypse. And it so happened that a scare actor who was a Marine and stuff, he devised he designed a few like pretty cool mazes, and then he got really ambitious and was like, let's design an actual zombie apocalypse maze where you get to shoot them and they react to you and stuff, as opposed to the mazes now where are mostly mazes you just expect to get spooked by the actors. They kind of jump out at you, they don't touch you or anything, but they don't really react to you outside of you screaming and stuff. So that was a really cool and creative thing, and they kind of streamed, because in the first 2 years that they did it, they closed up all of the Camp Snoopy area because that was kind of like a dead zone anyways in the Halloween event. They closed it all off, and they implemented some kind of like post-apocalyptic zombie situation where you're getting led by squad leaders doing certain objectives. But after a couple years, they realized like the demand is too popular to keep on doing it this way, so they streamlined it into a maze, and now there's still elements of what it used to be, but still, like, you still have the gun. There's still squad leaders kind of like queuing you up but there's no like actual objectives like it was in the first couple years of the Special Ops Infector, whatever the hell it was called. Oh yeah, and one of my favorite things was the trap experience. For 3 years straight, Knott's implemented this new maze where you had to pay extra. It was like $60 for up to a group of 6. And they can essentially, you are trapped in this maze. You got to find your way out, like by physically manipulating aspects of the maze, and the actors can touch you. They can manipulate you as well. And the first year was pretty cool. It was kind of funny and stuff. It was a gimmick. But then the next 2 years were actually no. Second year was okay. It was kind of gimmicky too. But the third year, I believe the same Marine guy got a hold of that maze where he was in charge of it, and that got real. That got too real, too quick. You know, they put. You know, I did the maze, and I remember in the first time I kind of went into shock. I was like, are we still in the maze now, or are we like actually in, you know, trapped in some fucking serial killer clown's like motorhome, like in his little trailer park motorhome? And it got really scary, you know, because you're in this tiny enclosure with this huge, you know, fat up clown that smells and stuff, and he's telling you to do weird things with his taxidermied animals. And you know, and he's kind of like, there's this hint of like he's getting some kind of sexual gratification from you doing these things to get out of his trailer park thing, his little house, whatever it is. You know, then you would get into another room, and there's this guy obsessed with you drinking his urine. So he, you know, and it smells like a bathroom in there, like a horribly maintained bathroom. He looks like a hillbilly with, like, you know, overalls and stuff. He's sounding kind of strange. Yeah, he gives you a cup of apple cider vinegar. But again, you're in the elements, you're smelling piss and crap, and it's warm and humid in there. And then there's like literally an open urinal just filled to the brim with piss. And he gives you this cup. He's like, all right, drink it. Like, you know, you got to purify yourself or some shit like that. Then again, like my little brother actually threw up. He was so immersed in that little spot. But for me, I was already immersed from the get-go. I was like, oh shit, like this is again, I thought like if he said the safe word, which is boysenberry, you know, like the berry that kind of made it all happen. It was really Mr. Knotts' wife. Her chicken is what made the park happen, but, you know, everyone knows the park for the berry. That's what's called Knott's Berry Farm. Yeah, like, we're just so immersed. It was intense, and then, unfortunately, that was the last year that it happened. I'm not sure why. Maybe it just wasn't making enough money, because they can only send in, you know, so many people at a time, and this is an event that sees millions of people in one season. So, imagine charging, you know, somebody $60, $60 per group of 6, and you're only allowed to send in like maybe 30 people a group of people per 30 minutes. That's only $120 per hour, and for a park, again, that makes millions. And they have to staff this particular maze with higher end actors, like actual professional actors and stuff. I imagine it just didn't make any money, but again, it was a neat gimmick. Not a neat gimmick, but it was a neat idea that was now introduced to the Halloween industry, and is now, you know, taken over by, you know, other smaller independent companies such as 13 Floors or whatever it's called. You know, there's a few other Empty Grave, but all these companies were former Not Scary Farm employees they pitched an idea to the Not Scary Farm panel, and it just was rejected. And yeah, it was rejected. So like, you know, fuck it. We know it's gonna be successful. Let's make our own company and do it that way. And that's how a lot of these companies exist. For example, Paranormal Productions, I believe it's called. You know, they're pretty popular Halloween company. You know, that's always pushing the envelope. But still, it started at Knott's Berry Farm. This guy's on my ass, dude. But yeah, those are a couple examples of pushing envelopes. And of course, there were examples where it failed because they tried implementing the light gun system in the past. For example, there was a maze called Alien Annihilation. And they gave you laser guns to go shoot aliens in a maze. You know, and I forget the premise of the maze, but it's just aliens. And you're just shooting them down with these laser guns. But from what I understand, it wasn't successful. Maybe just because they couldn't get the system to work properly. So it just turned into just a normal maze. But just always pushing the envelope. They're the first place to implement, you know, scare actors in an actual ride. You know, in the Calico Mine ride and the Log ride. they put actors in there, but because of litigation issues, you know, characters would fall into the ride and get seriously hurt. You know, they would bring it back a couple of years, and then they would stop doing it because, you know, someone did something stupid and got hurt. But, you know, because of that, you know, the experience, the LA Haunted Hayride exists. It was, you know, LA Haunted Hayride didn't just come out of nowhere. It was inspired by the Calico Mine Ride. Granted, you know, the LA Haunted Hayride isn't all that great of an event, to be honest, like the main attraction. But it became a bigger event over the years, and the little side attractions I feel are make up for the main attraction. You know, it's like Not Scary Farm out there in Griffith Park. It's fun. It's not expensive at all, and there's not that many people up there. Even on a busy day, you know, it's still pretty like free to roam around and stuff. Oh my god, this guy's on my ass again. Let's lose this fucker. Yeah, these cars think they're fast until they realize, like, oh no, I got 80 horsepower. I've only been using about 20 horsepower. But that's why I love this bike, man. It's completely pedestrian if you keep it below, you know, 5,000 RPM. But once you go above that, it's like, hey, let's party, man. Let's fucking go. Going back to the Universal experience. You know, everyone says Universal's better than Not Scary Farm, because they have the movie industry to back them up, and I think it's completely bullshit. You know, everything that is the Halloween industry came one way or another from Not Scary Farm. You know, and Halloween Horror Nights is only trying to mimic it, and granted, they get a lot more traction because of the name. You know, more people internationally know about the Universal Studio Park than the Not Scary Farm, so you got a lot more people that visit anyways. So they have to design their mazes in a way to handle that capacity. You know, the scares aren't all that intimate. You know, if you look at videos or if you go to the park itself, the scares are the same shit over and over again. It's a strobe light with the, you know, loud noise effect, and then a little scare actor pops out. Again, to streamline it, because you're getting, you know, more than millions of people going through these mazes. You know, you got to do things. You can't be as intimate as you would want to in a Halloween event. But it's still, I guess, if you've never experienced that kind of thing, it's still fun to do. But just knowing the standard that Not Scary Farm set for the industry, Halloween Horror Nights is not it. You know, the lines are super inefficient. You know, they're super long. The scares aren't all that intimate. The mazes there's not a story element to their mazes much. You know, they rely on you to understand the material of the movies that they built these mazes around. And, you know, even then it's like, what the fuck happened? As opposed to not most, you know, every now and then they have some pretty cool movie-based mazes, like Quarantine. You know, the zombie movie that takes place in an apartment. Record, I believe it was called in America. Quarantine or Record, I forget which one it is. But they did one of that. They did one of the Evil Dead. They did a few, like, you know, the Freddy Krueger and all that shit back in the 90s. Because, again, Universal failed. They did not exist during the 90s. They're like, we want a, you know, Freddy Krueger maze. And, like, not to, like, well, fuck it, we'll provide the supply. Oh, yeah, but going back to the Not Scary Farm, you know, because it is, like, a smaller, and I don't want to say smaller, but as opposed to Universal, where they have rights to, you know, the intellectual properties, Not has to rely on their storytelling, which is what they're really fucking good at. You know, they tell these completely original ideas. Well, not really, because again, they steal their ideas from other people, you know, that pitch the idea, then like, no, we don't like it. But then the people that are already working, they're like, you know what, we'll try that idea, but we're not going to give credit to the guy who pitched it, or the girl. Usually it's a lot more women that, you know, that are involved in that. But yeah, they rely on their storytelling experience. And because of that, the mazes, you know, they make sense. You can follow these visual cues and be like, oh, like, we're here now because of this happened in this particular part of the maze. For example, one of the best built mazes that they had was probably Pinocchio Unstrung, because it had such a strong story. You know, it followed the story that you know through the Disney films of Pinocchio. You know, like the Geppetto made the doll, and, you know, it became to life and stuff. But you would see, like, Geppetto was, I guess, a fucking pedophile or something. He had some twisted side to him that that the doll kind of or Pinocchio kind of was upset about or whatever, and it afflicted him or whatever. They have their own legacy mazes, I guess. Like the Origins is like a really big one, where it pretty much covers the history of Not Scary Farm since the 70s, and it's really cool. If you don't really have to understand the material to enjoy the maze, but the story is there. I need to listen to more Venom. I keep on hearing covers of Venom from these newer bands. I'm just like, shit, they're fucking awesome, man. But then I try listening to them, it's like, but they're still like, it's still black metal from the early 80s. It doesn't have that veracity that death metal has or thrash. But yeah, another one I don't really mention a lot is the Six Flags, the Fright Fest. That is sick as fuck. It's always been like the underdog of the Halloween events here in California. But for what you're paying for, you're getting your bang for your buck. Especially if you got the VIP pass, which is only like, if you include the Six Flags ticket, the passes to get into the mazes, and the VIP to get in front of line for the mazes, you're only paying like $100. And it's you can tell like they don't have as big of a budget as Scary Farm or Universal, but damn, like it's still a good experience. There's plenty of variety when it comes to mazes. They sometimes have some not gimmicky, but like they kind of take the ideas that not tried before that have been retired. For example, they give you like a flashlight that doesn't work all the time and put you into a pitch black maze. And since they don't have like the personnel or they don't have the support to kind of make sure that it runs correctly, you're literally just in a pitch black maze bumping into walls and stuff, which sounds like a horrible idea. But if for like a Scary Farm or like a Halloween event to veteran, that's just funny as fuck. Like, it's just something, especially if you go with someone that, with your friends and stuff, it's just another story to tell, to remember, as opposed to not where it's always working. Because they did have that at their they blacked out one of the mazes. But yeah, they blacked out one of the mazes so they can give you a flashlight that, again, works half the time, half the time doesn't work. So again, that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I highly recommend Six Flags. Do the VIP thing. It'll be busy as fuck because most people don't buy the VIP pass anyways. It's not necessary. But imagine you just finished doing a ride or a maze, and you're like, well, that was a lot of fun. Let's do it again. Or in the example of the blackout maze, my cousin and I, we were just bumping into walls because our flashlights didn't work. Like, fuck it, let's do it again. As opposed to it taking 3 hours to get on the ride, we're like, oh, we got the VIP, let's fucking do it. But yeah, that's all I got to say for right now, you guys. Hope you peace the fuck out. Have a good one.